So let's just say, for example, we had a 50% cost of goods sold, a 10% marketing, and a 20% profit. What's left over is your general and administrative expenses. That's kind of the catch-all bucket. For anything that didn't go in those three very clearly defined buckets, it's going to go in your G&A. And your G&A is the one that's going to have to wiggle because you're going to say, okay, here's what's left to cover this. Now, that's the dance of having a profitable business model, is to take that 100% and go, what is the reality of where I'm at now in my business? And where do I need to get it to before I scale it? Right? Because otherwise you're throwing good money at a bad problem by trying to either outsell it, and write this down, people, you cannot outsell a bad business model.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Creating Powerful Impact. I'm your host, Shay Wheat, founder of Grace and Ease Productions, where we support entrepreneurs just like you with event-based marketing and sales strategies, allowing you to build your authority, your credibility, and your visibility in the industry. Now, today's guest is somebody that I've known for a number of years. We've actually supported a number of clients together. However, the question I want to ask you before I introduce her is, are you someone who would just love the idea of having a financial roadmap that just eliminates unnecessary expenses, identifies the best price points for your products and services, and be able to determine and monitor the KPIs that will position you to scale faster? Well, my guest today is Andrea Jenson, founder and CEO of the Cashflow CFO, and they support businesses in doing just that. So as a premier fractional CFO and accounting firm, Andrea and her team offer a comprehensive strategy designed to bolster business profitability in a holistic and sustainable way. They're also celebrated as one of the top 5 business strategists for scaling a company in 2023 by both Forbes and Success magazines. And Andrea's expertise profoundly enhances the financial health of business, optimizing cash flow, controlling expenses, and cultivating investment strategies to fuel growth through M&A activities. Now you can see why I'm so excited to have and welcome Andrea to the Creating Powerful Impact stage. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. Thank you so much.
So, money. We're talking about money. And a lot of businesses don't necessarily always like talking about the money or looking at the money, but we have to do business by the numbers. And I would, based on what I've seen, I know a lot of entrepreneurs grow their business to 6 figures by just like sheer determination and grit and like doing whatever it takes to succeed. And they do it with like the best knowledge and skill that they have. And, you know, they're a part of the business school of hard knocks, right? However, I would love for you to kind of share with us what needs to change and shift in order for them to go from, you know, that 6 figures to multiple 7 and 8 figures, which is what they envision, right? But what do we have to put in place? What are the systems? What are the processes? What are the strategies? Tell us the tea, Andrea.
I would love to. I could talk about money all day long because money is there's so much good you could do with money, right? And as business owners, we're ultimately, we love talking about revenue, right?
Yes.
Every business owner, you start talking about revenue, they're like, oh yeah, revenue is great. How about we start talking about profit? I don't think enough business owners talk about profit because what happens between revenue and profit is sometimes a little gray. And that's really where the opportunity lies. And so, what you said, going from a 6-figure business, you're focused on revenue, you're testing the delivery, you're testing the pricing, they're testing. To get to the 7 figures and beyond, there's a lot that has to go into place as far as more structure around your money in the business, right? So revenue is great. We've got to have a flywheel that's consistently creating revenue. in the business. That's going to be your marketing, that's going to be your sales. But what happens once we have revenue? How are we planning and structuring the movement of that money coming in to the business so that we are ensuring that there's profit? And really what that looks like is making sure that your business model, profitable business model. You do not want to go from 6 to 7 figures until you're profitable, because if you're just thinking, I'm going to make more sales and revenue is going to fix all these problems, you're going to be spinning in that hamster wheel for a very long time. And when the dollars get bigger, the losses get bigger if you don't have this piece of your business solved and figured out. So that's really the biggest thing to first look at. And when I say a profitable business model, that means that you know what your customer acquisition cost is. You know what lead channels are giving you what ROI, and you're able to pull those levers as needed to hit your revenue goals. And then once you have the revenue, then we look at every dollar in revenue equals 100%. And that 100% you have to allocate throughout your business model between 4 big buckets. And those 4 big buckets are your cost of goods sold, or cost of revenue if you're a service-based business, your general and administrative expenses, your marketing, and your profit. Now, if you said I have 100% and I have to allocate it between these 4 buckets, the first place to start is how much does it cost me to deliver what it is that I'm selling? And that's looking at your cost of goods sold. So when you can say, okay, out of this 100%, 40 to 50% are going to be allocated to this bucket to deliver on what it is that I've sold. That's going to include your direct labor. That's going to include when you look at your total expenses, you can go through line by line and say, would I have paid this bill or this, or whatever it is, would I have spent this money if I did not make that sale? If the answer is I spent that money to service the sale, it goes in your cost of goods bucket. So all of that that's going to take the biggest chunk out of your 100%, right? So then once you move past, okay, check the box. My COGS are between 40 and 50% of every dollar in revenue. Okay, then you're going to move on to your marketing. And when we look at marketing, we have to understand that any expense that you spend as a business to acquire a lead is a marketing expense. And so that should be around 10%. So now we've allocated the cost to deliver what it is we're selling. That's our COGS. We've looked at our customer acquisition cost. That's our marketing, 10% there. Then we look at profit. And profit has to get split down into 4 additional things that you won't see on your P&L. They're going to show up in other places, other reports. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The first one is paying income taxes. You've got to allocate money out of your profit to pay income taxes. The second is to service debt. And so you're going to want to look at how much is required, what percent of revenue is earmarked that is servicing debt. And I can't change that or touch that. Now, there's some things you can do to affect that, but that's a whole nother conversation. The next one is to reinvest into growth. And we'll talk more about that because that's a really big, important one there. And then the last one is part of the owner's compensation package. Are they taking distributions or dividends, depending on the entity structure, as part of the compensation plan? And that a lot of that comes in from a tax planning perspective. Those are, so that right there, if you can put 20% in your profit bucket, you're doing very well. So let's just say, for example, we had a 50% cost of goods sold, a 10% marketing, and a 20% profit. What's left over is your general and administrative expenses. That's kind of the catch-all bucket. For anything that didn't go in those 3 very clearly defined buckets, it's going to go in your G&A. And your G&A is the one that's going to have to wiggle, because you're going to say, okay, here's what's left to cover this. Now that's the dance of having a profitable business model, is to take that 100% and go, what is the reality of where I'm at now in my business? And where do I need to get it to before I scale it?
Right.
Right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise you're throwing good money at a bad problem by
Yeah.
trying to either outsell it, and write this down, people, you cannot outsell a bad business model. It just doesn't,
Ooh,
right?
yeah. That's so true. You can't outsell a bad business model. And then if you were, looking at these four buckets and you go, okay, my cost of goods is 60% or my admin is 50%, right? You're like, I'm so out of alignment. And hence the reason why there's no profit, because those other pieces are all out of whack. So
Yeah.
then you have to go and start adjusting things, at least to get closer to those numbers, right?
Right, absolutely. So that's where it's like an art and a science, right? The science is, here's what it should look like. The art is, how do you actually deliver what it is you're selling at a price point the market will bear, at, that's the art form of being a CEO of a business entity, and
Mhm.
structuring things in the right way. We look at labor costs, we look at supply chain things that are always changing, we look at inflation, I mean, all of these factors go into the constant ebb and flow. And that's why it's so, so, so important for every business owner to be looking at budget versus actual by the 15th of every month, following month. You should have your financials closed by the 5th business day. Then your team needs to do the comparison piece, right? The budget versus actual, and update the cash flow statements and all the other things that go into having a dashboard that you can see what's the health of my business, and am I on track to hit my financial 1, 3, and 5-year financial goals that I've laid out for the business.
Mhm.
So having that view of budget versus actual every month, something's going to be fluctuating. Something's not going to be like you planned it, because otherwise business would be boring, and then we wouldn't have our chance to flex our muscles as, being these thought leaders and doing all the crazy things that we do as business owners. But that's really where it comes down to. You set the vision, your team sets the financial roadmap behind to support the vision and execute the vision. And then it's a monitor and adjust for the entire life cycle of that entity. You have to do that every single month.
Okay, so I'm going to come at it from the perspective of like my clients. So they're going to, let's say, host an event, and they're going to have for the quarter, let's say, a chunk of change that's going to come out. It's got to pay for the venue, it's got to pay for the food and beverage, it's got to pay for myself and AV and like all of these things on top of the marketing and so on and so forth. How does like big expenses like that come into play when you're trying to do your budgeting for the quarter?
Sure. So you're going to start with an annual goal, and then you're going to break it down into, what are my sales activities that are going to hit my revenue, and what is the timing that that's going to happen at. So if you have an event a quarter, then you would look at it and say, okay, I know that this event, first of all, you want to understand, is this when we look at the whole customer acquisition process, we want to understand, is this a fill the room to then sell them to, what does that look like? Or is this is, I need to sell X amount to hit my sales goals, and there is no back end, offer that's gonna, so you're gonna have different sales goals,
Mhm.
and for each of your different offerings that you have as a business. And so when we look at, okay, 10 million is my revenue goal for the year, I chunk that down. I look at seasonality, I look at my activities, so I understand each quarter what my revenue goal needs to be to ultimately equal my year revenue goal. And then back into, okay, so I'm going to have an event. Great. What does it look like? What am I offering, and how many do I need to sell? How many units to hit my revenue goal for, if you're only doing one big enrollment event per quarter, great. Then that makes it even easier, because you look at it and you can say, okay, everything for this quarter revenue wise has to come out of this event. So how many units do I need? What is my sales conversion rate? how many leads do I need, and how much does it cost me per lead? So you're working backwards on that acquisition funnel, if you will, so
Mhm.
that you know, okay, if my math works out, if I get 1,000 people, downloading my opt-in to learn about the event, 20% of those actually buy a ticket, and my ticket cost X number of dollars, and what percent are going to show up, and then what percent are going to buy, right? These are
Yep.
all the things that you need to like break that down and have metrics so you can identify if something in your funnel goes wonky. You're not going to be, oh, the day of my event, I really only have half of what I thought buying units in the room. There's no
Mhm.
way I would hit my sales goal because I didn't see 5 steps ago my percentage didn't hit where it should have been, and I should have adjusted and figured out what needed to happen then so that everything else was in line with what my expectations were.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's like it plays into our ticket map, right? And so we're mapping out those numbers and where does it need to come in order to hit the numbers because we've, done the reverse engineering side of it. So that's if they're doing like an enrollment or a conversion event every quarter. What if they're doing one a year and that essentially brings in the majority of the income? And then they know they're going to do, onesie twosies here throughout the rest of the months that they have for the year, but it's like one big push to get the majority of it. How do you break it out that way?
Yeah, so same process. You're just your numbers, instead of being split into a quarterly sales goals, you're going to have one main sales goal. And you can also look at it as segmenting those revenue streams. So you've got ticket sales, then you've got people that buy at the event, then you've got people that you have some kind of downsell or other opportunities, right? So you're putting percentages of how much dollars, right, needs to go into each of those buckets. And then you're backing into, well, how many, based on how much I've priced those items at, how many units do I need to have? So it's really the same kind of framework. They're just much bigger numbers because instead of having 4 little ones, you're having one big one.
Yeah.
So it's really important in that case, right? If you're putting all your eggs in one basket for that one big event, that you really know your metrics and you know each step along the way what those metrics need to be in order to, get to that one big event that's going to hit those revenue goals that you've set for yourself. The nice thing about doing the one thing is that if you don't hit those sales goals, you have the rest of the year to add stuff in, right? It's a numbers game, right? And that's all business is. And I know a lot of business owners, they hide from the numbers or they don't want to see them. They thought they were going to do this great big, high number, and then
Yeah.
it doesn't come in at that. And it's like, numbers have no emotion, numbers have no judgment, numbers are just numbers. And you have the power as the business owner to adjust, and they're just signs on a signpost, right? Do I turn right here or do I turn left? Let's see what the numbers said. And so it really helps take the guesswork out of running a business if you're using numbers as the tool that they really are.
Yeah. And the emotion, right? The emotion that's tied to it.
Yeah. Which, I get it because as business owners, we're usually type A, we're the overachievers, and it's a lesson in, self-development. They say entrepreneurism is like the highest level of self-development because a lot of times, if you haven't had an event like this before in your business, you can look at peers and see what were their metrics. But until you start getting in and running it yourself, you're not going to have that baseline to say, okay, I want a 20% increase from last year. There is no. So you're guessing, you're pulling numbers out. So it's good to have, a good, better, best as far as setting those goals. The nice thing about that is if you follow the framework of saying how your business model is allocated in those buckets, then you're going to know, okay, if I hit my good, awesome. I don't have to do anything else because all my numbers work out to hit the revenue, the profit goal that I want to have at the end of the year. So you've hit your revenue and your profit, everything in between is working and smooth. If not, then you just layer some more stuff in there, and you've got, every activity that you do that's a sales activity to create revenue still follows that same allocation, right? It's just each one, each month, like if you had a service business, for example, that had reoccurring services every month, you're going to have pretty much you're going to see the same numbers. If you have a business where you're bringing the revenue in, 1 or 2 months a year, you're going to see the same percent allocations, but the numbers will look wildly different.
So you were mentioning the personal development side, and I know a lot of business owners will go and invest in learning the systems and invest in the personal development and the mindset and all of these pieces. Which part of the bucket does that go into when you're investing in a program, training, services? And you could be getting business out of it as well, but the main intention was to better yourself or learn something for the company. Where does that go?
Yeah. So if it's just a purely educational expense, then it would go in your general and administrative. But
Okay.
if there is an opportunity for you to get referrals or generate business from the event, you could look at splitting that and classifying maybe half of it as a marketing channel, right? A customer acquisition channel. And
Mhm.
in your books, when you're coding the transactions, you can split it and go into the two different expense accounts. But that's how I would look at that.
Okay. Okay. So going back to the buckets, you were talking about in the profit, you got taxes, servicing debt, reinvesting in growth, and then the owner's comp and the dividends. One you actually have to pay yourself.
That's very important, people.
Right. And I see multiple six-figure business owners not paying themselves and putting all the money back into the business. Pros and cons of that.
Yeah, so there's two ways to grow a business, right? The first is reinvesting all of the profits back into uh, customer acquisition. Do not invest it back into delivery or G&A because that's a broken business model. But if you're strategically saying, okay, I've got an extra $10,000 here, I'm going to put it back into ad spend because I know that I've been getting X number, right? We don't want to gamble with our profits. We want to know very confidently the data supports, if I do this, I should get this result, right? So that we're being very careful with that. And so if you choose to do that, a lot of businesses in the beginning, that's the way that they're growing it. So that's one way to do it, right? It's to reinvest your profits back into growth. The other way is to go out and get funding. And that's going to depend on the risk tolerance of the business owner, on which way they want to go, and also the speed at which they want to get there. So if my business model is solid, my customer acquisition, the flywheel is all dialed in, I'm good, I just need more customers, then yes, it's a safe bet to say if I go out and get the outside funding, it's not going to, be a bad thing. If you have not perfected your business model and those other components of it, and you go out and get outside funding, odds are that's not going to be a wise decision and work out for you in the long run. And unfortunately, we see a lot of businesses that's what happens to. We saw a lot of that happen with all the COVID stimulus. We saw businesses that had no business making it through COVID because they didn't have a good business model to start with, get the funding, and eventually it caught up with them. And there was no other, they had been falsely propped up, if you will.
Mhm.
And then now their business is still not profitable. And now they have all this debt that's attached to them. So it's a really sad thing to see. And it's hard from the seat that I'm in because I see so many businesses and I see the ones that flourish and the ones that struggle. And the ones that are flourishing are the ones that have kind of done that slow down to speed up piece.
Yep.
And they've really worked to get their business model in a place that it's solid, and then everybody's confident. Okay, let's now move to the next level. So
That makes sense. So talking about models, you're the creator of the profit growth method. What is that, or have you already started to talk about it?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of everything that we've talked about plus more, right? It's a very holistic way of looking at, your business as a business owner. Your business is probably going to be one of the biggest assets that you own. And we like to see business owners kind of go through the method of get your business model profitable. And there's lots of components and pieces that go into doing that. And then from there, decide, how do I want to grow this? Do I want to grow this through, well, let me back up a little bit more too, because every business owner is different and every business owner has different personal goals. What are you trying to achieve with this asset that is your business? Do you want to be able to set it up to sell it? Is this going to be your main source of retirement? Is this one of many that you are going to, a serial entrepreneur? Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And I think that that's really important to get clear on in the beginning of your business. What are my 1, 3, 5 year financial goals? And what am I willing to tolerate, I guess is the best way to say it, because there's a lot of, if you want to go fast, it's stressful. You can get there, but it's different than just slowly growing it and steady Eddie kind of thing. So understand what you're ultimately trying to achieve, and then get your model profitable. Start hitting that one, hit the 1 year mark, and then from there, look at it and say, okay, now how am I going to grow it? Am I going to do it through acquisitions? Am I
Mhm.
going to do it through mergers, right? So M&A is a big component of growing. Am I going to, look at all of those pieces? So then you've grown the company. Now, how am I setting it up to create the most value when I am ready to exit? And so that all takes time to build into the company. It depends on what your ultimate goal is. If you're trying to get it to, $20 million and sell it to private equity, that's going to look like very different from a business owner that says, I want to get it to about 5 million and exit, in 10 years. And then that's going to be my retirement to buy
Mhm.
a lake house and pay off, whatever it may be, right? Very both cool and great goals, but the strategy is going to be different. The profit growth method is going to have the same framework, and the variables that are going to come into that are speed, dollar, like the volume, like what type of dollars are we trying to generate with this asset, and then what do you ultimately want to do with it towards the end.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that it's like the framework is the same, but based on what you want to do with it. If you want to sell it, if you want to exit, how you want to exit, you need to have all of these other pieces and essentially the foundation of your buckets in place before you can even make that happen, right? And so if you're looking to exit in 5 years, you definitely need to talk to Andrea's team sooner rather than later.
Yeah, yeah. Right now it's an unprecedented time, right? The amount of baby boomer business owners that are exiting are,
Mhm.
more than has ever been in any transition of businesses. And the sad fact is that only 20% of businesses that are listed for sale actually sell. Yeah. And their reason for that is because it's haphazardly, oh, okay, I'm ready to sell. I wake up one day and I'm tired of doing this. I'm going to sell my business. Well, that business owner is going to get a rude awakening because they haven't built transferable value, which means that if you came to me, Shay, and said, hey, I'm selling my business, would you like to buy it? I would say, great, let's learn about your business. Do we need you to operate it for it to work, to make money? Well, yeah, actually, I have to, I'm the main operator and I do everything. Okay, great. Well, if I take Shay and move her out of there, there's really no transferable value.
Mhm.
That's one piece of it that we see a lot of business owners kind of go, oh, okay. The other piece of that is when we talk about what your ultimate plan is dollar wise to sell this asset for. If your business is professionally managed, or if you manage it yourself, the valuation is wildly different. Like life-changing numbers of dollars different. And so these are things business owners don't know. Also looking at key employees. Do you have key employees, and will they stay? Do they have some kind of employment contract or something that's keeping them invested in the company when it changes hands? Looking at your revenue. Do you have 80% of your revenue coming from 20% of your clients? Well, what if one of those clients decides, hey, I don't know this new owner, I'm leaving. Do I still have a business that has value? And looking at your books are the story, right? They're the record of all the decisions that you have made as a business owner over the years, good, bad, ugly. You can't hide from your books, right? So when you get into that due diligence phase and somebody's going through your financials, they're going to say, oh, you've been great for the last 18 months, but what happened over here? And you're going to have to go, oh, well, that was because da, 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 da. Okay, I just knocked your sales price down because now all of a sudden that sense of security and risk that I thought was there is now not there as much as I thought. So I'm going to reduce the sales price that I'm willing to pay you for your business. So there's so many different components that go into what you're trying to achieve, which is why you need a CFO to help you go through this process, right? To be your guide, because there's just when you compare the amount that you will invest in this type of skill set in your business compared to the reward of what you'll actually get dollars in your pocket when you go to sell your business, it's like a 200% ROI there. I mean, it's silly. What's available out there to business owners is literally life-changing dollars if they do it right.
Yeah. Well, and I can keep talking to you. I do have one more question. So, the ones that are like, oh, well, my aunt does my bills for me and does my bookkeeping and this, that, and the other. Great and amazing, I'm sure. However, what I've seen you guys do, because I've been a part of you working with the same clients that I do, is you actually can get in there and save the client money, so much so that it essentially pays for your team to take everything over. So not only are you coming in and saving the money and finding the money, but then you're also helping them grow the business as well, which I think kind of sets you apart than most people out there that are just doing accounting or just doing bookkeeping or things along those lines.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because that's a really good point, Shay, because I think it's great to have your aunt do your books, but don't have her give you strategic guidance on how to make your business profitable and grow it. So there's some very clear roles in your financial pillar of your business that you should have. And so when we look at your bookkeeper and we look at your tax preparer, whether that's a CPA or an EA or whatever you have doing it, those are historical viewpoints of your business. So they're looking at, where did you go in this business? How much did you spend? Is it in the right categories to save you in taxes? All of that is historical. You might meet with your tax strategist to say, here's what my revenue numbers are. What do I need to do to help plan and save on taxes? But that is a very different conversation from a fractional CFO coming in and looking at your business and saying, hey, your labor costs are too high, or you're not bidding these jobs correctly, or you're bidding them correctly, but you're not managing your staff levels, you're not managing your output here, and you're coming way in over what you bid it at. And so those are the managerial accounting pieces that a fractional CFO does for a business. And business owners don't even realize they're missing that. All they know is like, I look at these great revenue numbers and I don't even want to look at my profit.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, this is not something that you can, as a business owner, right? There's a lot of hats we wear and there's a lot of genius in business owners, right? This is not one area that you can just wing it, or you can find, hey, call a friend and get a strategy and get past this, right? This is something that to fix a business model's profitability and set a financial plan to scale and grow and create that value and be able to exit for multiple millions of dollars, that's something you've got to go, advanced degrees for. You've got to have 20 plus years in corporate or different, big strategies and working different things to then come to the small and medium-sized businesses and go, okay, I can take what I know and translate it, because there's a very big difference between, oh, I used to be a CFO for a big corporation and now I'm going to go consult for small and medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
Is very different.
Very different.
And so that's also the art of the consulting piece, right? You can have the finance brain, but you have to be able to translate it to a business owner so that, number one, they understand it and it's actionable data. Because running a business it's complicated, right? There's a lot of decisions that we have to make. And as the numbers get bigger, the decisions become more imperative to make the right decision, because the impact could swing either way. And so that's where it's like, we work with our clients and we say, you come to us and say, I want to do XYZ. And we're like, okay, cool. Let's see how we can figure that out. And we'll put the plan in place for you. We'll put the bumper rails, right? We're going to put the KPIs in place to track. If we make this investment, we'll flow it through and go, what is the net effect, right? What is the profitability of that investment? And that can be something as small as, I want to buy a new piece of equipment, or I want to, instead of having an event at this hotel, I want to have it at this hotel and it's going to cost X number more. We flow it through to the bottom line so that you can look at it and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or no, actually that's not where I should be spending my money. So that's really
that's huge. That's absolutely huge, Andrea. I love that piece. Okay, wealth of information, wealth of knowledge. If somebody is interested in hearing more about what it is you have to say, want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to stay in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. So if you're listening to this conversation today and you're like, I think I want to learn more about this. I want to hear more. I don't think enough people are talking about this in business, right? And this is such a key piece of it. Come check out our podcast. It's called the Cashflow CFO. Come to our website, thecashflowcfo.com. You can link straight out to the podcast from there. You can check out our blogs. You can get on our list, so you're getting, this type of content delivered to you, and really helping you to think differently about the financial decisions you're making in your business. And then if you want some help implementing it, we'd love to have that opportunity as well.
Perfect. Last question for you is, what is a takeaway or memorable note you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think it's been coming up all over the place lately, and it's, you cannot outsell a bad business model. So if you just think more sales are going to solve my problems, you're probably investing your resources, time, energy, in the wrong spots. And if you are not seeing that 20% profit, no matter what your revenue is, you should still have that 20% profit. Reach out and find somebody that can help you to navigate that and get you back into that alignment. Perfect.
Thank you, Andrea, for being with us today. And I want to thank our audience for joining us on another episode of Creating Powerful Impact. I am actually really excited for you to take this wealth of knowledge and the lessons and the resources that you learned here today, start implementing them, and create even more impact in your world. Until next time, have an outstanding rest of your day. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast. If you are a successful coach, speaker, author, or thought leader who would like to be on this program, simply visit creatingpowerfulimpact.com/guest. If you are someone who got something out of this interview, would you please do me a favor and share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on your socials. Also, if you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Creating Powerful Impact. I love seeing all of your posts and great guest selections. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they really mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more about us? head on over to our website, graceandeaseproductions.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for Grace and Ease Productions on your favorite platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.